I call to order the Board of Aldermen meeting for August 23rd, 2021. We ask that you please stand with us for the invocation to be led by Alderman Jackson, which will be followed by the stage overleaf.
If you could bow your heads, please. Dear God, thank you for allowing us to be here today, Lord. And let our position and our direction be strictly for the town. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? No gap.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that truck in the housing area for a vote.
That would be 7E.
Sounds good to me.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Alderwoman Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To my understanding, speaking with the town interim manager, number C, the Rusted Burger grand opening, and I think that Ms. Jackson will be giving her opening speech there, stating that she's running for mayor. Now, I know a lot of stuff has changed, and the town no longer goes by protocol. I think they looked into it, and I don't think that would be a conflict of interest, is to have that removed.
Ms. Williams, did you read?
Yes, sir, I did. I had to please remove item 6A, the Green Cross Award. The recipient was unable to be here, so we will remove that and then schedule a time when both parties can be here. And then if we could please add the discussion regarding COVID-19 and masks, the mask mandate.
Okay, that would be item D, the Cumberland County proposal to mandate masks. That's item 7D.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to get some clarification on Alderman Guerra's request. I'm clear on that.
Okay, Alderman O'Gara. Mr. Johnson, please.
Could you give me an idea exactly what you want?
I'm sorry?
What do you want?
Yeah, I wasn't clear on what the request. It just said bring something to a vote on the trucks. I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, right now, we're having a problem with 18-wheelers in the actual housing developments. And I'll give you an example. Friday night, individual pulled in with an 18-wheeler and a trailer and parked on Lake Tree Boulevard in front of 232 Kitchen. The individual called police. The police came. They put a note on the window. The guy took the truck and he left. He went somewhere, dumped the trailer, and he came back and parked the actual cab on Lake Tree. You understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Right, and so I guess what I'm trying to understand is what action are you asking the board to take?
You weren't here last time, but we were talking about making policy, giving the police the ability to go out there and say, well, the town of Twin Lakes does not want 18-wheelers parked there. As it stands right now, we've got 5 different locations. 2 on Goodyear, which is 18-wheelers, and pretty much Kitchen, And there's another street going down, Lake Tree, Rain Street, Rain Circle. And, the last one I see is pretty much located across the street from a light.
So are you requesting the board to direct staff to develop a policy and bring it back to the board? for consideration?
Well, actually, I guess you have to vote to do that, see.
Right, but that's your request.
Yeah, because, staff has already did the research and, came up with all the information.
Right.
But the board needs to act, to give staff to go ahead and take care of it.
To develop a policy.
So at last month's meeting, they talked about it, and the board decided not to direct staff to move forward with the ordinance amendment to allow this to happen and bring the ordinance amendment back before this board. So we did not move any further, but I think he wants to bring it back up to talk about it again to see if they would like a consensus or vote to direct staff to draft an ordinance that can again then come to the board for review. Would be the logistical.
Yeah, because all the police can do right now is give them a suggestion that they need. They can't enforce anything. We're good?
Yeah, it just
Okay.
seems to me, so what you're asking for is essentially what was asked for at the last meeting?
What I'm asking for is for us to, vote on whether or not we're gonna have a policy. Whether or not we're gonna give our police department the tools to work with, to, purge our neighborhoods of 18-wheelers. They're tearing up the housing area, the roads, whatnot.
Yeah, and I'm just making sure that this is not something that the board decided not to take action on at the last meeting. Because if that's the case, then, you know, you'd be asking the board either for a reconsideration, which would require a supermajority vote.
Well, we really didn't take action, we discussed it. And that's why it was written up for discussion.
Alderwoman Jackson and Alderwoman Sutton.
Mayor, I was going to ask to delete, 7C. It was not toward my, thing as Ms. Sutherland has stated, so she was incorrectly stated wrong. It was Rusted Burger is supposed to be doing a grand opening this week. And Melissa, did they get back with you on the date? What is the date?
Well, they're open now.
Well, they're opening, but they were having a grand opening, so what is the date that she gave you for the grand opening? Cause Melissa talked to the manager got her email and was supposed to email her with the date. And the purpose was, we just let the community know that Rusted Burger was having a grand opening. So she didn't get back with you with that date, did she? So there's no need for discussion, because we have to have the date.
We moving to C.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Alderwoman.
Mayor Dobbins.
Hold on, please. Hold on. Alderwoman Sutton.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back about those 18-wheelers, because we need to be specific, and I think we discussed a little bit about not singling them out, and we asked Ms. Samantha out of town to send a letter to the individual that it was one at first. Right around, I do see them, parked, Walmart, Ruby Tuesday, and different places, because if we're talking about large vehicles, that could be, buses, it could be, those, big trailers that people carry and different things. So if we're gonna discuss it, I think we did that and we said that, but I don't know if Ms. Samantha sent the letter out, to that one. First it was one. Look like we're discussing it now.
You're so right about that.
Yeah.
Alderwoman Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. One, could, everyone speak into the mic, because I'm barely hearing, most of the conversation. The other thing is, as far as the trucks, we've already discussed that last month. So I don't, know why we would wanna go through that again. I mean, if we wanna, come back and do a detailed discussion on how we'll move forward with 18-wheelers, but I mean, we have all kinds of issues, with vehicles, and I think we should, take a time when we discuss it all in full rather than just targeting certain things. The second thing is, I also wanted, Rustic Burger removed because we don't announce, all of our businesses, and if we're not gonna do it, equally, then I don't think we should just, point out one business. Maybe we should invite, new businesses as they're getting ready to get their COAs, invite them to come in and speak and invite the community to come, but I don't think it's right for us to do it from our platform. So I don't think we should add the thing about the trucks, and I think, Rustic Burger should be removed from the agenda.
It has been removed now.
Thank you.
And we don't need to discuss anything while we're trying to add something. Let us move on. The approval of the agenda. Mayor Pro Tem,
I move that we approve the agenda.
Alderman O'Gara.
I second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded, we approve the agenda. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by the sign of nay. Item 4, approval of consent items. Is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just wanted to have a comment on the minutes of July 26th, 2021.
What page is that?
On page 5, I would just like the minutes to reflect that I'm opposed to the use of town funds for the town to gain title of Hillside Cemetery. So if you could just make a note of that in the minutes.
Was that something?
Which one is it?
Is that something?
Hold on, please.
Is that something that was brought up in the actual meeting?
Yeah.
What line is that, sir?
It would be on page 5, but
Page
during
5.
the discussion, I protested the use of town funds to gain ownership of the Hillside Cemetery.
Alderwoman Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think that the minutes need to be, there are several grammatical errors still. And I don't think they need to be approved unless they're going to correct the errors before. Well, I just don't think they need to be approved. I found several errors grammatically again. And if we're putting this in our permanent record, they need to be correct grammatically.
Thank you. Alderman O'Gara.
Yeah, I think we need to, find out what the errors are.
I tell you, let's do this from now on, folks. Melissa works hard to put out the following week's agenda, like on Thursday, after the crowd meeting. She has a telephone, she has an office, so we could save some time. Once you see these errors and want to point them out to her, you can do it. Now, we have, over the past few weeks, have been making grammatical errors when you could call her on the telephone, red line, what you think is correction, and let her make that
No.
change.
Sir, that's incorrect, because when we get the agenda, those are the minutes, so we have to have them corrected at the
Right,
meeting.
exactly.
So that's the proper protocol.
Okay, but
We can't-
go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is the official agenda that goes out to everybody, even the public. So if we get it before it goes to the public, that's a different story. But if we don't get it before it's sent out to everyone, then we can't make these corrections to this meeting.
Okay, Melissa, can you get these out before?
Yes, sir.
Like, for example, this one right here, if they were to tell you tomorrow what these corrections were, you could do it tomorrow, right? And then they would be ready for adoption, in the following meeting.
Yes.
So there is time, or you can make time. Okay, Alderwoman Cooper, is there a motion to table these?
Yes, sir, I make a motion that we table the minutes until the necessary corrections are done.
Is that second? Alderwoman Cooper?
Southern. She made the motion. You want me to second it?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to second that motion, please.
You've heard the motion, are you ready for the question?
Question.
All in favor, sign of aye.
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 Any opposed by the sign of nay? Okay, thank you. Item 5, Melissa, any comments? Okay. Item 6 has been deleted for tonight's meeting. We're now at item 7, 7A, Susan McCullen and the Local Government Commission.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, did you bring your books back?
Ma'am, we did.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So, can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, what page should we be on?
We are gonna be looking on page 43. That's where we're starting from last week. And if you remember, I'll have question slides as we go. So if you'll save your questions, we'll answer them all for that module as we go through. That's gonna be page 14 in your book, slide 43.
So,
Thanks. Okay, we're gonna be talking about the finance officer for a few minutes. Remember, the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act requires a governing board to appoint a finance officer. And the LGC says that finance officer needs to be an employee of the government. You can contract out and hire somebody to help the finance officer keep the books, catch the books up, write financials, those sorts of things. But the finance officer themselves need to be an employee of the board, of the government. And they need to be able, they need to have to understand the reporting and the accounting enough that they can monitor whoever you hire. They don't have to be able to do the work, perhaps, but they need to understand enough about the work that they can monitor what that person is doing and make sure that that work is being completed timely and accurately. So the Budget and Fiscal Control Act also requires the finance officer to be budgeted at an amount that's not less than $50,000. You should make sure that you have adequate coverage and not just the minimum. That is a minimum. And that's the number in the statute, but it's a very old statute. And so what we typically tell units is that in this case, that minimum should be ignored. And you should pick a number that is more appropriate for the risk your government faces. And your insurance broker can help you determine what that is, but it is important to have that bonding in place at an adequate amount, because that is gonna protect your government. $50,000, it doesn't take very long in this handling of money before you get to $50,000. And so the government is facing a risk in that case that they don't have coverage for. Some of the things that the finance officer is responsible for: an accounting system that has all of the internal controls that need to be there. That includes segregation of duties, the security around the different functions that need to be there. They're responsible for dispersing all of the funds, for preparing financial reports, both the monthly ones and the annual ones, or at least making sure that that you've got a contract with someone else that is preparing the annual financial statement. But that is very much in their responsibility.
They're also responsible for managing or overseeing the receipt and the deposit of money from the time that it leaves a citizen's hands and comes into the government's, control, all the way to until it's secured in the bank and then posted in the general ledger. So they have all that whole responsibility. Of course, they're not gonna do it all themselves. They may have a contractor help them with part of it, or another, accounting employee, but they're gonna be responsible for the whole gamut of that, receipt and deposit of money. They're responsible for managing debt, for making sure that the debt service payments are budgeted appropriately, and that those debt payments are paid timely in accordance with the amortization schedules that you have. They're also responsible for supervising the cash and investments. So questions about the finance officer or the finance officer role?
Mayor Pro Tem and then Alderman. I'm sorry, and then Alderman Jackson. Okay, I guess it was, Alderman Garrett.
You said 50,000 really isn't a good figure,
It isn't.
but like, I guess we have like maybe $12, $13 million budget.
Exactly, yeah.
Would we hit them with that?
Excuse me?
Would we try to?
That whole budget?
Yeah.
No. You will, the way that I've seen it done is that you would estimate, through using some bank files, bank records, how much cash you might have moving around your offices on a given day, how much your deposits normally are. It's something that a finance officer can do and can provide you. And so your risk is really around the cash and the disbursements piece, not your whole budget.
Okay,
So it would be significantly less than that, but it would be more than 50,000.
Thank you.
Okay. Good question, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Talking about the general ledger
Uh-huh.
and making sure everything is accounted for. And when you're posting, the bank reconciliation, of course, should be done daily. As well as you said, the finance director, for any revenue for each department that the town may have,
Yeah,
it should be turned in each day.
yes,
And it should be accountable for that monies, recreation, like anyone who's handling monies,
yes,
and it's documented, so when you get ready to do your budget, everything is lining up. But it shouldn't be sitting, in a department for periods of time, because then you're not, accounting for that money. So I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Yeah.
And, post it to the general ledger
yes.
on, a daily basis.
On a daily basis.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be gaps in there. That's what causes
Right.
the situation.
There's a statutory requirement.
Yes, ma'am.
For daily deposits, and that statutory requirement is is entity-wide. So one department, the recreation department, might have some money, and other departments such as
Water
water and
department,
sewer
sewer.
are gonna have funds, and that statutory limit applies to the entire entity. So there should never be a business day when the banks are open that the town is not doing a deposit. Only the very, very smallest entities would ever not meet that kind
Whenever
of
handling
requirement.
money permits, it. Anything that has to do in different departments, handling money should be done on a daily basis.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
not accumulate,
Mhm.
because that way you're not efficient when you post into the general ledger
Mhm.
of that nature. So we got kind of behind in situations like that. But going farther with this training,
Yeah.
I think we should know what we
Yes.
need to do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
This might be a very crazy question. Who pays the bond?
Who pays the bond? The town does.
So, okay.
Yeah, the town does. You're the beneficiary, but you pay for the bond.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, all right, well, I'll move on. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about monthly financial reports. It is really important, let me put this away so I don't lose my place. It is really important that the governing board receive monthly financial reports, budget and actual. There's some samples here in the slide that are very, very small, but it's showing just the general fund. In your case, I would want to see a general fund, a water and sewer fund, and an electric fund at the very least. You're gonna want to see them a budget to actual at a very high level. You don't want to see the line items because you're gonna get lost in that. You want to see budget to actual reports that are at the legal level of budgetary control. So you're probably adopting your budget ordinance at the department level in your general fund. That's how you're gonna want, at the level you're gonna want the budget and actual reports to be provided to you every month. Now, you may ask for some details, but you want to see a high level revenue source, property taxes, sales taxes, those types of things, and budget to actual expenditure department line item for department level so that you can get a big picture. You want the high level picture every month, and that should be routinely a part of your packet. And if you don't get that from your finance officer, then you need to be asking your finance officer why you don't have that. You also want to get, you might ask for some cash balances information. You might ask your finance officer to analyze if there's big variances. You might look at the same data last year, the revenue sources, where they were, budget to actual, and where they were last year, and the same expenditures or department level totals and where they were last year, and look at differences. And you might ask your finance officer to summarize that for you as part of that report that comes to you. Your goal for monthly or quarterly reporting, whatever you decide to do, the interim reporting, your goal is that at year end, when you get your audit, there's no board surprises. No board surprises. You know that you were really, really close, I'm just making stuff up, in the water and sewer fund at the end of the year. So you might expect that ultimately, by the time they closed their books, that they went over budget. So no board surprises is the point of routine interim reporting. It becomes something you talk about every month at your board meeting. We do have, I will mention, we do have some sample templates that we can show you. We collect these from time to time when we see one that we like. We encourage governing boards to always know the financial condition of their government. You can't make decisions if you don't know the financial condition of your government. So if you have a third-party bookkeeper, there's something in the middle of the screen. Can you move that? That's okay. That's okay. If you have a third-party bookkeeper that is helping your finance officer with some of the accounting and reporting, then monthly or quarterly reporting should be required in that contract. you should include language in that contract that you don't, that is very specific. When do you want reports? When do you want the prior month closed? What specific monthly or quarterly reports do you want? And what the consequences are if you don't get those. Are you not gonna pay that month's charges until you get the reporting that you need? I think that's an appropriate thing to expect of a third-party bookkeeper. Lots of our units that use third-party bookkeepers get in trouble when they don't have very specific language in their contracts that hold those bookkeepers accountable. So then I want to talk a little bit about fund balance. Unassigned fund balance is a savings account. It's for your use in the case of an emergency, a hurricane, those types of unforeseen things that might happen. It doesn't mean that you can spend it. Cash does not mean you can spend it. The cash balance that you see either in your bank statements or that you might see on your balance sheet in your annual financial statements does not mean you can spend that. There are already commitments made by the town that cash will be used for payroll or utilities or other commitments. If it's restricted cash, those may be bond proceeds that are specific to a project, that type of thing. Just because you see cash on a balance sheet or in a bank statement does not mean you can spend it. One of the things that we see a lot is that our minimum that we expect fund balance to be is 8%. And that calculation is a very statutory calculation. But what fund balance available is the portion of your cash less some receivables and some other things. And the fund balance available percentage is that number over the town's total expenditures in your general fund. So a lot of people will tell you, you'll see it in writing, that we have a minimum fund balance available as a percentage of expenditures of 8%. That is not true. 8% is a number that got out in the community years ago. If you think about it, 8% is just 1 month's average expenditures. So 1 month's routine expenditures is 8% of fund balance. So that would not be enough for a unit that is very dependent on sales, property taxes, the way that North Carolina municipalities are. If you think about a whole lot of your money comes in November, December, and early January. And so you don't want to be at June 30th with 8% of fund balance. You certainly don't want to be there at negative 0.86% of fund balance, which is where you're sitting now, or you were at the end of 2020. So the town has got quite a ways to go before it grows fund balance to the level even where it should be for its peers. The fund balance percentage now for average for the town of Spring Lake's peers is 53.16%. So you got almost 60% of growth in your fund balance before you're where the average is. Half of that average is 26.58%, and that's when we get concerned. And so you're at -4, so you got 30% of your expenditure growth to grow your fund balance before you begin to be out of the woods. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how inadequate the town's fund balance is at this point in time. Just to reiterate that, we had talked about that earlier, and I wanted to mention that to you. We do have some sample fund balances policies in your book. Now, I'm not saying it's a great one, I'm saying there's one in there. But I do encourage you to develop one that will help you decide over time, because it's gonna take you, I think we said it would take you about 7 or 8 years to restore your fund balance where it would be.
To zero, right?
Huh?
To get to zero.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're at negative now.
Right.
Yeah. So to get to, I don't know, I haven't done any math so, with this, so I don't know how long it would take you to get to, half the average of your population size. But regardless, one of the best tools for you to use that to get there is to decide as a board that you're gonna develop a fund balance policy and keep it very simple. The one that's in our book is a couple of pages long. You don't need that. You just need we're gonna put 300,000 in our fund balance every year, or whatever the number is. And you stick to it. You don't spend below that. You, as a board, you make a commitment to it, and then you stick to it. And you manage to it, and you don't make any spending decisions together that would get you below that number, no matter what. And over time, with that determination, you will begin to rebuild your community's fund balance and have the reserves there that you need to have. And we talked about some of this before, so I just want to mention it again. So, questions about fund balance or any of the monthly reports or anything like that?
I think we all understand the fund balance. Yeah.
Fund balance?
Yeah, it's not something that you can just go use over like, it's not ready to, say you hire somebody, want to pay them out of fund balance.
Right.
That's,
You don't do that.
yeah, you can't.
But, right, you don't do that. Yeah, because fund balance, by its nature, should be used for things that are not recurring.
Right.
Yeah, so you don't wanna use it for operations. And so you wanna use it for things that are one time and, or it's a hurricane. And you know that, at the end of this, at the end of a year, FEMA's gonna, or 2 years maybe, FEMA's gonna reimburse you for some of that. So you wanna use it for very limited things, but when you need it, you really need it. And, so absolutely not using it for salaries or anything that's a recurring or operating cost. Yes.
So basically, what you're saying is that, we get heavy rain around here, we flood like we did a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Well, I'm not gonna say it, but you understand what I'm saying.
I do. Those types of emergency situations, yes.
Alderman Jackson and Alderman Sullivan.
So, basically, it's a savings account almost.
It's a savings account.
And
It is.
Use it for your emergency.
Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a rainy day fund. It's a rainy day fund, Alderman O'Gara.
I know, I had some.
Yeah. Okay, who else?
We had a committee that was on the FEMA,
Uh-huh.
and they kept track. We received monies back as you stated,
Mhm.
because it is emergency fund, and
Yeah.
we'll receive that monies back, it should go back into the fund balance?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, sometimes units will put those in, the FEMA projects in a separate fund from the general fund, a little special revenue fund.
Right, should be a line
Mhm.
item that
Yeah.
explains to the board what it is,
Yep.
and so we would know where it is,
Yes.
because that's the reimbursement for.
And it is important to do that
Right.
right, y'all know that, if you've been
Exactly.
through it, yeah. FEMA, it can be, accounting for FEMA is tough, but you have to do it right, or you don't get your money back, or you don't get all of it. Anything, any other questions? Okay. All right, I want to talk about pre-audits and disbursements next. If you look in the book that we gave you, there is, look at the very, very back, and forward about 3 or 4 pages, there is an Exhibit O that is a pre-audit process. And you've probably heard us talk about pre-audit. And I know it's a weird term, it's a legal term, that's all it is in North Carolina. Pre-audit is a legal term, and what we're doing is, we're looking at an expenditure, a proposed expenditure, requisition that somebody has done for for you to buy something, or they want to do a contract for something. And the pre-audit is looking to see before you buy it, that's the key, before you buy it, before you commit to it, is there money available in the budget to pay it? So what you have to do is, you think about your different departmental budgets as different buckets. So I've got a public safety budget bucket, I've got a general government budget bucket. Each one of those has got its own set of salaries and utilities and whatever they have to run the department. And so each one of them is going to have their own level of budgetary expenditures that are appropriate for them. And that pre-audit is gonna look at that specific department, and does that department have money available to spend on this item or good or service or whatever they're trying to buy. And the key is to do it before. If you do a pre-audit after somebody's bought it, you've already violated state law. If money's not available, you've already violated state law. So the pre-audit process, the expenditure side of it is my total budget less what I have already spent in this department, less what I've already encumbered in this department, other commitments and things that I have expended, that I plan to spend in this department, like contract services, but I haven't spent them yet. They're just contract commitments at this point. And what you have left is what's available in this specific department's budget for this year. And if that is a number that is smaller than what you're looking at, or if there's not money there because of all the other things you know you're gonna have, then you can't buy that thing. You just cannot buy it. You don't have you're gonna have to either do a budget amendment and either not buy something else that you wanna buy, or you're gonna have to, your other option is to increase fund balance, which you don't have. So if somebody wants to buy something, anything in the town, if somebody wants to buy something that is not budgeted, you're gonna have to reduce something else to buy this. You don't have any choices about increasing your budget because you don't have any fund balance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So basically what you're doing is, the water department needs something real bad,
Uh-huh,
but, the manager's sitting here, and she knows that the street department has a little bit of flex. So she could kind of make a budget amendment and shift that over to the water department.
well, almost, but those are in two different funds.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, if she could do that, so the street department's in the general fund, and general government is in the general fund. So if she knows there's something budgeted here in general government that maybe you don't need this year, then she could reduce the expenditures here, the appropriations here, I apologize, and she could increase them here, but she hasn't changed the total of your general fund, right? She could do that. And that would give her the ability to buy what the street department really needed. The fund balance calculation that we're talking about only applies to the general fund. So the water and sewer it also has some of its own issues, but that fund balance available calculation that I'm talking about right now is just applying to the general.
Okay,
Okay.
Ms. Woolen wait, but then
Yeah.
Alderman Jackson, and then Alderman Sutton.
Okay.
So in our budget ordinance that we adopted, we have the manager can move $5,000 within a department. So within Parks and Rec or governing body, I
Oh,
can
okay.
move $5,000, which is what we said. And then anything that goes from department to department, that budget amendment has to come here.
Yes.
For the board approval and LGC approval.
Mhm.
And then anything over $5,000, even if it's within the same department, has to come before the board and, LGC for
Yeah.
approval.
So some units will do it different ways. Some units will allow it to go from one department to another, but if it's just within one department, then you would see that as a budget amendment before it got changed. So, okay.
I'm a little confused. When you say fund balance, is that for everything and everybody? Cause I know you just said that what you were talking about was just for the general fund.
Yeah, the fund balance calculation that I'm talking about, that is, the negative 4.86% and should be at least 26%, is just the general fund. All funds, of course, have a fund balance, but we don't typically talk about a fund balance in the, enterprise funds. Okay. So I know it's confusing. I apologize.
No, you're fine, you're
Yeah.
fine.
All right.
Hold on.
In a good light, this exhibit O pre-audit process,
Uh-huh.
and, I guess, it is a good light if you put it in here. It says in the first paragraph, at times, which I think is pretty good,
Uh-huh.
if it's true, that's why
Yeah.
I say in a good light. It says, at times, if the unit cash reserves are low, the finance officer,
Mhm.
but we have to have a finance officer, may refuse to issue any pre-audit certificate until he or she feels that adequate funds are available. So, I asked that question because they are the finance director and they should have the power. And then if we get our monthly statements, seeing where the monies is,
Mhm.
so he knows that the pre-audit is low.
Yeah.
So if a board member said, well, I heard what Ms. Samantha said, that's why I say in a good light, if it was
Yeah,
all true,
yeah.
and he wasn't in the negative and all of
Yeah.
that. Then, he has the power to let us know and to say, no, this is not a good time to purchase, whatever item it is, because that is his role when he
Yes.
gets hired.
Yes. Yeah. You're actually anticipating my next slide.
That's why I
But,
said in a great light.
But you're right, the finance officer cannot disperse funds.
Mhm.
unless there is budget to pay, and then when the check is cut, unless there's cash to pay that obligation when it becomes due. There's actually two pieces to a pre-audit. There's the piece that happens when you do the budget portion that commits it, does the PO and the contract that commits the money. There's also a piece that happens with a pre-audit that has the same sort of language that happens when the check is cut. And there might be several months between the two differences, depending on how big what you're buying is. Sometimes there's, it's a year if you're buying a fire truck or something. So there's a period of time between them, and the finance officer has to certify or pre-audit at both places and be comfortable that there's a commitment in the budget and that they can actually cash the check at the bank and that it will clear before they completely do both steps of the pre-audit.
So let me ask this question, because they have that power, but if it said, well, I'm gonna find the money somewhere. If you're looking for the money somewhere, then that means we don't have it.
Exactly.
Trying to find it, to
Right.
bring it over here in this line item.
Yeah, you should
Never try to find it.
You should know before you write the check that the money's there, the cash is there. And you as a board should be very comfortable empowering your finance officer to tell you no. If there's not money in the budget, the finance officer should be very comfortable saying no. Because as a professional, I'm not gonna do something if I'm a strong finance officer. I'm not gonna do something that I don't feel, that I know I can't sign in good faith. So I'm not gonna issue a PO, I'm not gonna issue a contract without knowing that I've got available budget. And if your finance officer tells you no, you need to let that stand. They need to be your gatekeeper, and they will keep you out of trouble if you give them that power. And it's important that they have that power.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to some other, the next slide. Governing boards are responsible, even though the finance officer's in the weeds, doing the budget to actual and making sure that the numbers are working, you're setting the tone at the top, that you want to be responsible, you don't want to spend against the budget, that you are going to not spend unless there's any money. And that means when you're talking about could we do this, could we do that, you're thinking about, if I'm talking about doing this, then I've got to be talking about not doing something else. So if you're talking, and I'm just gonna pick what y'all talked about earlier, somebody mentioned the cemetery discussion. If you're talking about spending money on the cemetery that's not budgeted, then you gotta figure out, where am I cutting something else that is budgeted? It's a either or right now with y'all. You cannot spend more money somewhere else if you don't have, unless you've got a cut. So you're gonna have to cut something, and you might have to cut something important if you want to spend something that big. So just think about, as you're talking about, any money that you spend, is it budgeted? That's your first question. And if it's not budgeted, the conversation's very different. Because you don't have choices. You've got to cut something else if we wanna do this. So that's really, every dollar decision has to start there. And it should anyway, but especially with the town as it is. It's gonna start there anyway. What I would urge you to do is, y'all set that tone. If you make it clear to your staff, to your manager, that you're not gonna overspend, to your community, that you're not gonna overspend your budget, that you're gonna live within your means as a community. That means that some of the things citizens ask for, they don't get right now. And that's easy for me to say, because I don't live here. But it is the truth. It means that you say no sometimes. And so, but I urge you to set that tone. And you do that by doing a fund balance policy, like I talked with you earlier, by empowering your finance officer, by talking in your board meetings about your budget choices, by making it clear to your community you are not going to overspend your budget, that you're going to live within your means. And you did them a favor when you do that too. So again, if there are no funds in the budget, it can't be, the expenditure cannot be made. I mentioned it before, you have to revise, if you want to spend something that's not budgeted, you're going to reduce other appropriations somewhere in that same fund and increase the one that you want to do now. So you've got to make those decisions. And fund balance appropriation is not an option for many, many years to come. So if you're gonna spend money, you've gotta just go do that up and down, back and forth. Any other questions about this section? Okay, I'll move on. The annual audit process. The Local Government Budget Fiscal Control Act also requires each governing board to have an audit annually, as you know, by a CPA. And the audit is an examination of your unit's accounting records. So the auditor's going to give you an opinion, and their opinion's going to either be a clean opinion, which they're going to call unmodified, or if there's issues in it, meaning they have to qualify for some reason because they couldn't get to they couldn't get to an opinion that your statements are your statements materially reflect your financial condition. If they can't get to that, then they're going to give you a modified opinion. And those are pretty rare in North Carolina. We do have them, not so many as we used to have in the past, but we do, some units have had them in the past. We are usually able to get to a clean opinion in North Carolina local governments. The unmodified opinion or the clean opinion does not mean that everything's 100% correct. It doesn't mean, it's not going to guarantee you that there's no fraud. No audits, no independent audits are designed to find fraud unless they're a forensic audit. We'll talk more about the forensic audit in a minute. They're not a statement that the government or that the unit did a good job spending public money. They might show you what it was. An annual audit's also going to include, in some cases, depending on the level of grant expenditures that a local government had, a annual audit might also include what we call a single audit. And I would imagine that the town the size of Spring Lake, you routinely have a single audit, I would expect. But that's going to include some reports on internal controls, whether or not there are material weaknesses. And a material weakness is a significant enough weakness that it impacted, it impacts your auditor's work that they have to do. And a significant deficiency is sort of along that same line, but not quite to the level of a material weakness. But our audit office gets extremely concerned about material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. Those are the ones that we ask units to respond to us and address for us. An audit is also gonna point out statutory violations if you don't have daily deposits, which we were talking about, or if you don't use the pre-audit appropriately, that type of thing. Statutory violations will be disclosed in your financials by your auditor. So the governing board is typically responsible for selecting and entering into a contract with a qualified auditor. Now, this year, your interim manager and finance folks did an RFP, they got no responses. So we have an auditor that has decided, that has agreed to do the 2021 audit for Spring Lake, Cherry Becker, CBH has agreed to do the audit. They are an excellent firm, very, very good firm. And the partner, April Adams, that you'll be dealing with, I'm pretty sure you'll be the one, she's the one that you'll be dealing with, is just a joy to work with. So I think you and your staff will be pleased with the work you get and the amount of input you get from her. Now, they won't be able to start their work until the auditor's forensic audit is done. Now, forensic audit is different from an annual year-end audit. It's much more in the weeds. She's not just looking at a significant number of transactions. She's looking at all the data elements associated with that transaction. For instance, if she was looking at a check, the auditor, if she was looking at a check, she's looking at the vendor name, the vendor address, she's looking at the invoice that was backing that up. She's looking at all kinds of data elements associated with that check at a level that she might not in a regular annual audit. It's a deep dive. So a forensic audit is very different from an annual audit. You got it, a lot more expensive, absolutely, a lot more expensive, amazingly expensive, like take your breath away, expensive. And so, she is working with that, and she will have to finish that work before Chair Becker can come in and begin audit planning and moving ahead with 2021. We talked about the fiscal accountability agreement last month. That's why we gave you an extension on that, knowing that the forensic audit was gonna have to happen and be concluded before the annual audit could really begin. So, that was the reason for that change that we did. Now, it's gonna be the board's responsibility to make sure that this audit gets done timely. The board needs to make sure that the finance officer knows how important it is to meet this legal deadline. It is the responsibility of the board to drive that as a tone at the top, to not allow that a delay in audits, to value the audit work and the timeliness of citizens having that, having that audit available to them. The auditor is going to come here and present findings, and you should understand what your auditor is presenting to you, and you should have a chance to ask questions. And then the board will be responsible through the staff in addressing any issues that are in the audit. If there are findings that I mentioned, material weaknesses, or some of those things, there has to be a corrective action plan in the audit. And staff will be the ones that will be responding to that and making sure that whatever was the finding gets fixed. But the board emphasizes how they value it by following up with the finance officer and making sure that you bring up, you know, a few months past the audit, you have them come and report to you what they've done, their progress with correcting that action. That you don't just wait until next year and it be the same finding again. That's important that those findings be addressed in the year that they're.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Uh-huh.
A few slides back, talk about what a financial audit is and what it isn't. And, one of the things that a financial audit doesn't do is look for fraud,
Correct.
guarantee, all this kind of stuff. And I've been in a situation before where they've done forensic audit and financial audit simultaneously. So what is the basis for your statement that you have to wait to do a financial audit after the conclusion of the forensic audit? Because I've seen it where it's not been done.
That's a good question. The reason that was said to me today by Cherry Becker, and I would imagine that in this case, it's because the state's doing the forensic and the internal and the external audit. Now, she can start some of her planning, and she can perhaps begin some of her work, but she can't move too far along until she knows she's got a good trial balance, a final trial balance, those sorts of things.
Right, but the forensic audit doesn't determine what the trial balance would be.
Oh, yes.
In a financial audit, no, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. A forensic audit that will determine that's what they're looking at, is transactions that were recorded inappropriately or that were not handled in the right way. So it may affect your cash, it may affect your operating revenues, if there are revenues that should have been there but are not, it may affect your expenditure levels. All of those transactions hit your trial balance. So a forensic audit is going to impact those balances.
Okay, I've just been in one of those before where they didn't have to wait, and Cherry Becker was involved in
Okay.
that. And
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how the process can
Okay.
proceed without
Yeah.
delay.
We will re-look at that as we go forward, and if there can be some overlap, certainly I would love to see some of that, but we're gonna let the Auditor Wood and Chair Becker's auditor drive those decisions, and the town.
Yeah, because it's the town's audit.
It
And
is.
Cherry Becker is a vendor, okay?
Yeah.
Mayor Dobbins?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. If the attorney is done.
I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. So I heard you mention, forensic audit, and, this is the first time I'm hearing that word, that's something that's going on right now, and I don't understand why as a board, we weren't told specifically that there is a forensic audit going on, and, or maybe you just didn't use the word, but the second thing is, you said Cherry Becker's gonna do our audit, but we don't even know how much we haven't even been told how much how much it's gonna cost or anything. And so I know it may be that they were the only ones that offered, but still, it sounds like that decision's been made and we haven't been told anything. So I just feel like things are going on that we're not being given information about.
No, that's a very good point. No, we will work with Cherry Becker and your interim manager to make sure that audit fee is fair. And y'all are still the board, y'all will still get to approve that contract. Just like you would, the governing boards approve the audit contract. Y'all are the governing board, so you will approve. And if you don't feel good about the fee, we'll talk about that. No, that's a very good point, and I should have said that.
Okay, and as far as the forensic audit,
It's just a word I hadn't used before.
Okay.
No, she's correct, Ms. Cooper. I mean, the essence of what the state auditor is doing is forensic in nature. So, although the term may not have been used, that's exactly what
Yeah.
it is.
okay, I haven't heard it before, and, so it was kind of a shock.
Oh, so,
You know, cause I know there were, those of us who wanted to have one done in the past, and we were shot down, so I'm glad that it's happening,
Yeah.
but I'd be interested to know how much it's gonna cost.
So, it's been referred to, by an investigation by the state auditor's office, is what, I've called it since they have been here. So that is, I apologize if I did not use forensic, but it's an investigation by the state auditor's
Yeah.
office. And internally, we're also doing our own analysis of every single transaction, which I'll go over in our financial report. And just got word this afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock, that Cherry Baker was going, said they would do it. But of course, that contract will come to the board at our next meeting for review and approval. So it's all very, very fresh and good.
yeah, it is, it's very new. So, I just spoke to her the auditor this afternoon myself, so,
Okay, all right, thank you.
okay.
Is my light lighting up?
Ma'am.
I asked before
Ma'am,
the,
people-
town attorney, sir.
People are talking.
No, but I'm asking you, I just wanna know if it's working, because
It's not working
before the
all night.
attorney spoke, I did bring.
You're next, please,
Yeah, but
speak up.
I just
You're
wanna
next.
know if it's lighting up, sir, I'm just asking, that's all I'm
That's
asking.
all I know since you brought me in.
Okay, some of it you don't have to, repeat, cause my question was gonna be the forensic audit. We as a board had asked that over a year ago to have a forensic audit when we were so far behind. But you stated that the town manager sent out a RFP. There was no response.
Correct.
That's normally unusual, but the situation that the town in, I can understand. But Cherry Becker was one of our, audit firms that we were gonna ask to come in,
Yeah.
because of their reputation.
They're a good firm.
And, but some of it's been stated that I was gonna ask before the attorney asked, how much is it gonna be? And you just stated at the next board meeting, they'll bring it. And it's for our 2021. Also, I wanted to state, since you said it's the board's responsibility, I have to go back to the next page, to make sure, if we go back to page 60, where it says the audit annual, and it's the board's responsibility to make sure. Now, we had to sign, this existing board had to sign a resolution. There was 3 more added to it. This audit and this situation that the town is gonna be in, as we stated prior, to get to a 0, it's gonna be about 7 years. So, we're gonna have, election November the 2nd. So, it does not mean just because it's existing board signed it, this will follow on with the new board that comes on as well.
Yeah.
It's their obligation, and it's gonna be strict. That will make sure that the funds, as we going over it, I think you would probably train them as well.
Yes.
Because it is training they have to go to prior. But they have to sign that resolution as well. Because some people is under the impression that once this board is gone, or whatever the case may be, or however it is, that resolution ends then.
Are you talking about the fiscal accountability agreement we
Yes,
signed?
ma'am.
Oh, yeah. I would think that if there are any changes, we would want those new members to sign that. And that we would want, and I'm just, I haven't thought about it at all.
Well, I was
but
asked, so
I
I'm
think
asking.
we would want them to do training
Right.
as well. And we, depending on how many that was, we might just do that on a business day or something, because it would be the same training.
But they still would have to sign that
Mhm, they would still have-
accountability.
we would
Because
want-
they're accountable
Yes.
at that time, because they'll be the board or
Yes,
whatever.
ma'am, yes, ma'am.
And that will continue to go on for years.
Oh, wow,
Until we get straight. But anyway, I just wanted to put it out there, just
Yes.
not for the existing.
okay, okay.
All right, and the other stuff was answered, prior, so you don't have to go over that. Thank you.
Okay.
One
It-
more question.
Okay,
Got a question with everything that's going on in the forensic audit that you're talking about. We don't have a finance officer. So, how are we able to move forward to make sure everything is done right? Should we be considering, maybe contracting, someone to be in that position while we have all this going on?
well,
You have one.
So I am the interim
Yeah.
finance officer. It was prior to myself, it was Adam Lindsay. And then we have, right now we have 3 financial staff from 2 different private consulting firms that are assisting us in our
Mhm.
operations.
yeah,
And one of those is acting in a capacity as a finance director, but they cannot hold the finance officer, oath because they're a consultant. So I hold that oath, and then we have staff who help assist in the daily operations. They're contracted employees, or consultants, not
Yeah.
employees, excuse me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is it a privilege to us to know who they are? Names and
Names.
everything?
Yes, that's actually, coming up later.
okay,
Thank you.
yeah, okay. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about establishing a debt policy. Debt is a tool that can be used to leverage available resources. It can be a helpful tool, but you gotta use it in the right way. You've gotta use a mixture of debt and current resources to finance projects. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about debt because of the issue with the Spring Lake, partnership or property acquisition. That entity is a nonprofit. We talked about some of this at the beginning, one of the first nights I was here. Spring Lake Partnership Acquisitions is a nonprofit, and it was set up as a separate legal entity. But because of the way that board was set up, that legal entity's board is the same as your board. I think originally, the former manager and the former finance officer were the board there. And I'm not sure who the board is now for them, but the way it was set up, their board was part of your board, but there were not people on their board that were not also part of the Spring Lake board.
It wasn't set up that way,
It wasn't?
no. It was totally a separate board initially.
But the board members initially, from what I understand, were the former manager and the former finance officer.
Now, there were other outsiders.
There were others.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They were employees of the town of Spring Lake.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
So, okay, some of them were. And the, manager and the finance officer wasn't part of the board at all.
Hmm.
The board.
Who was the governing board then at the beginning when it was set up?
My recollection, and I always had to have a disclaimer, I wasn't part of setting that up. The initial board included not members of the Board of Aldermen.
Yes, it did.
No, it didn't include any.
You said the
board
initial
at all.
board.
None of the
Because we
board
didn't know
members.
nothing about it.
Okay, let me table that discussion then, because I thought,
Right.
what I wanna do is, I was gonna tell you how it was gonna be reported in your financial statements. So, and that's the way, I mean, Nancy and I had looked at it together, and if I've got a version of the original documentation to set up, I would like to have those documents if I could.
Yeah, I think you have all the documents. In fact, I know that.
Okay. Who's on the board now?
The board now is comprised of 2 members of the Board of Aldermen and the mayor.
Okay, okay. Okay, well, that gets me what I need. Okay, so let me tell you, so let me back up. The way that board is organized for the Spring Lake Partnership acquisitions, they are going to be reported as part of your financial statements. Okay, y'all know that. They're gonna be reported as a fund in your financial statements, because they're a blended component unit. That is an accounting jargon term, but it means that they are, their board is, in essence, you. Yeah, so they're gonna be reported in your financial statements. So there'll be a balance sheet and an operating statement for Spring Lake, property acquisitions, and the related note disclosures. The debt note disclosures for them will be in your financial statements. So, I just wanted you to make sure that you were aware of that. So whatever happens with the debt related to Spring Lake Partnership acquisitions is gonna be in your financials whenever we get to that point. Okay?
One more question.
All right.
One more question, please.
Uh-huh.
Alderwoman Summers.
Well, the attorney spoke to Miss Nancy concerning the Spring Lake acquisition to be able to move forward. So I guess this is what you're telling us tonight is something that, at the meeting of the Spring Lake acquisition, the new board was not aware of until you spoke about it tonight. Which means wherever we was going, or whatever you was looking into, Mr. Charleston, you would have to, it's something totally different. What am I?
I think they're 2 separate issues.
Okay.
One of which, I think it requires further discussion, but not in open session.
Excuse me?
I said, I think there are 2 separate issues, one of which requires further discussion, but not in a public session because it involves legal issues.
But what she's saying though, is that Spring Lake acquisition is gonna be part of the financials. Because it was not prior, and this is how we're gonna be handling it for future reference.
Yeah, go on.
Okay,
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
But, excuse me, I think that the LGC may have some misunderstanding about the beginning because her initial discussion was that Spring Lake acquisition was comprised essentially of all of, the Board of Aldermen. And that wasn't the case.
It wasn't.
In this fiscal year, probably in the last 2 months,
Yeah.
the board changed.
It changed,
Because there
yeah.
were people that were not available, and there were other issues coming up that had to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So then this board had to get control of that, so that
Yeah.
they could start
Right.
to deal with that. But that was not the case prior
Okay.
to this fiscal year that we're in now.
Okay, well, regardless, because that change was made during this year, in this fiscal year, it will be part of the town's financial statement. It's part of the reporting entity.
Yeah, I guess I'm not clear what you're saying. Initially, when the LGC first started to talk about this, including reporting this in the financials, it was in the prior fiscal year. Okay, this fiscal year just ended June 30th.
But y'all changed that when did you change that? Did you change that?
It was before June.
It was before June 30th. So if you changed that before June 30th, then however it was at June 30th is
Yeah,
how.
it was after June 30th, but then.
Yeah, it
Well,
was,
It was after June.
yeah.
30th.
Anyway, we got to
We'll-
get straight on that
we
because it
will.
should have never
We
been
will.
created, I'm just saying. But
Well,
anyway,
that's, I mean, that's,
all right,
Ms. Susan.
so we
yeah,
can move
no.
forward.
What I would like to do before, it's my understanding, and I don't have the agreement as it stood at June 30th, obviously, in front of me. It's purely an accounting decision, has nothing to do with, anything but an accounting decision. GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, defines based on how that organization was set up, that whether or not it's included in the financial reporting entity for the town. So, if I could, Samantha, if I could get a copy of that agreement, the way it stood at June 30th.
Those
Then we could-
documents were all sent to Sharon Evans.
Okay, I'm sure we probably already have one at that day.
Forward them, but the entire,
Okay,
set of closing
Okay.
documents was sent to the LGC,
okay, okay,
a few months ago.
okay, all right. So let's.
Mayor,
Go ahead, Alderwoman Cooper.
thank you. I'm just so confused. You're now saying that that the Spring Lake property acquisitions, financial statement will be attached to the town of Spring Lake's financial statements. Is that correct?
It'll be included, if it's reported the way Nancy Medlin and I both thought should be, when we looked at the documents way back in April. If it's included, if it's reported the way we think it should be, then it is part of your financial reporting entity as the Governmental Accounting Standards Board defines it. It's purely an accounting decision. And what that means is their statements, their note disclosures will be included in the town of Spring Lakes in 2021. So yes, ma'am, that is true.
Can we get a copy of that, requirement, or can I? I'd like to see that, whatever it is that,
Okay,
you came to that decision.
I will be glad,
Please.
yeah, I will be glad to send it to you. I warn you, it is really nasty technical, but I will be glad to send that to you. Okay?
I understand
I'll
technical,
send it
thank you,
to everybody. I'll
Yeah,
send it to everybody.
exactly.
thank you.
Okay. I'll send that to your, intermanager tomorrow.
Just one more
Thank
question.
you.
Well,
Okay. Okay.
Alderwoman Jackson.
Here I go with my questions.
Okay.
But then, because I'm lost, so I wanna just kinda.
I know, I hate to talk about Gatsby, I'm so sorry.
You're fine, some kind of understanding. What everybody is talking about, is that good or bad for us to be included in our financial statements?
Well,
Give it to me.
I don't know that, I really,
Not good.
I don't think it's good. I mean,
No.
they don't have them, there's, not sure how I mean, we've talked about, we don't know how the
Right.
debt's gonna be paid.
But if it's full disclosure, it could be, well, it should be good, because you peel back some things that perhaps that are under there,
Yeah.
that had to come to light anyway.
Yeah.
So it's gonna
It
turn out good for the town.
Yes, if you view good as transparent and honest and above board, because things are in the open, then yes, that is, because everything needs to be
Open, transparent, that's
truth-
right.
Yes, so if that's what you meant by that, then yes, that's good. Yes.
How would you view it as bad? What could be happening or what is happening that makes it bad?
Well, I just think that because the town's financial situation is so dire right now, that
It would add on to it?
that debt is, yes, absolutely, it makes your hole deeper.
And is that because the members are on the board? Some of our board members are on
Correct,
that
that's
board?
the structure from GASB that pulls it in, yes.
So if the members, if some of our members was not on that board, then we wouldn't have to worry about it.
it might still meet the requirements for a component unit. It would just depend on how it's set up.
Thank you so much.
But it's that, relationship between the board members. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's the way you structured it, so that works for you. I'm not saying the setup is inappropriate. What I'm saying is, that's what drove the reporting decision that Nancy Medlin and I made when we looked at it together.
I thought it was a conflict of interest.
I think that there's two things that may be being conflated now. I wanna make sure the board understands this. Financial reporting does not create legal liability in and of itself, and I wanna make sure that the
Correct.
board understands that needs to be clear, the
Mhm.
public needs to understand.
Yes, yes.
And that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is because of the close relationship between the two, they're reported,
Yes,
okay, but it doesn't create liability.
yes, that's
for the
true.
town.
Excellent point. It does not change the legal liabilities that are there or not. Anyway, it's a reporting decision. Yes.
Two more
Okay.
questions. Alderman
Okay.
O'Gara and then Alderwoman Sutton.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Jackson has answered my question when she was talking to us.
Turn your light up.
Any others?
Okay, you said it's in our financials,
Mm-hmm.
that's how it's gonna be reported for
Yes.
future reference.
Yes.
Okay, so it's in the financials, and the obligation that's out there right now, which is the $800,000 that needs to be paid on it, are we restructuring that to pull it back? Because for that money, there was a payment need to be made. But since you all have talked about it, and you're restructuring it and put it into our financials, where does that go at?
Let me address this real quick. Spring Lake property acquisitions is in your prior year financial statements, in your prior year audits. It's already in there. So it's not some new, reflection. Your prior auditor recognized the relationship on the gas fee and included a reference in the financials. So if you look at the audits that are out there right now, they discuss Spring Lake property acquisitions. So this is not a new concept at all. All right, so.
Or why was it a separate entity? That's what I'm trying to, okay, if everything was collectively like it should have been, why was it a separate entity? That now, for future reference, is gonna be in the financial, because it was a separate entity.
Mhm.
And now what you're talking about, you and Nancy and stuff, it's gonna be all together with all the funds.
It's gonna be reported
Right.
now as a fund. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
And
Okay,
you're
we
right,
can move on.
Yeah, it was in there the prior year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in there, so I don't want you guys to think as a board that there is some new reporting. Pull out the financials, the audit that's available right now, the town's audit. And there's a discussion in there about Spring Lake property acquisition and the debt that's, involved is already there. So, all the LGC is saying is that reporting is not continued.
So there's no need to have any more meetings then concerning.
Okay, so,
That ends it, all right.
so the local government, you should make sure that you've got a reasonable debt burden. And as you're making debt decisions, you should consider that. And one of the things I want to say to you about the LGC, we can help you with that. We have some sample debt policies that are in the book that I gave you. There are also other debt policies that you can find and use. But regardless, we can help you develop and make sure that you're not getting in over your heads with debt, particularly as you're working to get out of this hole. A heavy debt burden is considered to be 15% of your expenditures or more. So 15% of your total expenditures or more is a debt burden. Now, you're not there, but we would want you to even work to tamp that down as you work to recover and restore your financial condition. Too much debt can have an impact, can have a negative impact on your financial condition. Debt service needs to be included in the budget. I already mentioned the debt policy. So a good debt policy is gonna talk about the uses of debt, when should it be used, the types of debt. Are you gonna do general obligations, which commit your property tax? And you promise, in essence, to raise your property taxes if you don't have enough money to pay it. Are you gonna do special or limited obligation bonds or revenue bonds for water and sewer? There's a use for debt that's valid. Debt limitations, how much debt, how should it be paid? We help you with all of these things. So what I would do is urge you, as you're considering debt, whether or not it is debt that is required for us to approve, I would urge you to come to us and talk to our debt people about the debt. We are the only people, we might be the only people that are gonna work with the board and the town, the staff, the attorney. We might be the only people that know debt, that are working completely on your behalf. We don't have a dog in this fight. We want you to be able to get what you want, what your community needs. And we don't certainly make more money when you do more debt. We don't have any sort of, anything but advocacy for the community and the residents. So I just urge you to use the LGC as a tool that can help advise you. We're glad to do that.
And I might point out that the board, was advised, to go in the direction that they went with respect to Springway property acquisition. So they had counsel, and they were advised to go that way. So I want you to think that the board just kind of independently said.
Oh, no, I wasn't really talking about, I just wanted them to understand the value of the LGC to them as they're building debt going forward.
The reason North Carolina has such a strong financial system is because of the role the LGC plays. It's the envy of many other states.
Well, we really value our relationship with local governments and want to help when we can that way, so. I also want to spend, and I know we're getting way over, I do apologize. I want to spend a few minutes talking about ethics and conflicts of interest. There are some very specific statutes in 160A that require governing boards to adopt a policy containing a code of ethics. I looked on the website, I could not find it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. I just couldn't find it. I was looking for I love to look at them. I just, because I used to work with that some in my other life. Then the 168-87 requires all members of governing boards to get ethics training within 12 months of being elected or re-elected to the office. Honesty and integrity. It's important that board members foster public trust in the board and among the community. Impartiality and respect. All issues handled with fairness, impartiality, and respect. I'm not telling y'all anything y'all don't already know. I'm going through our slides. Fair and equitable treatment. It's important that that board members should ever act in a way that should result in preferential treatment. And that board members have an obligation to faithfully perform their duties and accept responsibility for the code of ethics. Talking about conflict of interest, an elected official should avoid using the elected office for personal gain. Should avoid influencing public contracts for a personal benefit. Should avoid accepting gifts or favors to influence the awarding of a public contract. Avoid using confidential information for personal gain. So y'all know all of those things. I didn't tell you anything your mama didn't teach you. So, any questions there? That's all I have. I know y'all are really glad. I've talked a long time. I know y'all are tired of hearing talk. Any questions?
Alderman O'Gara.
Let me say thank you.
Okay.
I enjoyed this portion better than the
Oh,
first
did you?
portion.
I know you were ready for the other portion. I appreciate that. So, thank you, and I appreciate your patience. You know, 2.5 hours of this, I know y'all are tired of it, but I appreciate your patience and your willingness to let me come and speak to you. So, thank
Couple
you.
more, Alderwoman Jackson.
I wanna thank you for being patient with my questions.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Anytime, I like questions.
You answered them just where I can understand them, so I thank you for that.
You're welcome. If y'all have any questions come up, my contact information is here. If there's anything I can do to help either one of you, just let me know. We're there to assist y'all.
So it's okay to call me.
Oh, absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem, and then, Ms. Willen Weaver.
I want to say thank you as well, and where is your contact information?
It's on the very last page, on slide 78. It's got our general phone number there on that last slide, as well as my email. It's slide 78.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Willen Weaver, and then Alderwoman Sutherland.
As discussed at the last meeting, this is the updated fiscal accountability agreement, with the changes made, reflected mainly on page, 5. And that was clarifying the dates for the LGC 203 and then the annual audit, just clarify that language where they're to be determined. And then everything else is the same as it was, and it has to be signed by the 23rd, which is tonight. And then the dates extended out for the bank reconciliations to December 31st. So I just want to bring that, because we discussed it last time, just trying to.
Yeah, we did.
So I have the original that we will, sign unless anyone has any questions.
Could you point out the changes in this document and to board and see exactly what it is?
So this is one that was sent, and then the changes are gonna be the dates on page 2, item 8, A and B, December 31st. And then on the front, just merely the dates, and when the date had to be signed by, the other agreements at August 9th, which we've obviously passed off August 9th. And then on page 5, the table, the last 2 rows, the LGC 203 for June 30th, and then the annual audit. Those due dates are to be determined. You can see in bold, anything in bold, is that change, and that is because the previous ones, did have a different date that we obviously could not meet.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Alderwoman Sutherland?
Just one, Ms. Collins, I just want to thank you as well. I think that we should continue our ongoing training. And I think that, I don't know what happened to it, but we had, Nancy had asked us about having a board, and we haven't had any training yet, Ms. Samantha. concerning the budget, and, I think the mayor had, talked about it, what we haven't, what is the name of it, I don't forget, I'm tired. So we can go over these, kind of things like this as well.
Yeah.
And, Miss Nancy had recommended it.
So
We signed it and we passed it, we just haven't had a meeting yet.
okay.
And, I think I serve on there, I forget who else served on, Ms. Cooper,
Oh, the audit committee.
audit committee.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had a meeting,
Yeah.
but they suggested the audit committee, and I
Yeah.
think that's great, and we can utilize this as well.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And we recommend that units do have an audit
exactly,
committee.
and she
Yeah.
did, we just haven't had a
Yeah.
meeting, but I just think, we could utilize this
Yeah.
information,
Mhm.
with the training.
Yes,
But anyway, thank you all.
thank you.
David, all of you.
I'm sorry.
On page 3 of the letter from the LGC, number 3,
Page what?
page 3.
There's no page number.
Fiscal accountability agreement.
Oh, on the fiscal accountability agreement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Page 3.
I don't have a copy of
You can have that,
that. Okay.
but I look on.
I will bring it right back
No
to you.
problem.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Under this discussion about the budget amendment,
Okay, let me get, okay. Okay, uh-huh.
okay, it says here that all budget amendments must be reviewed by the LGC staff.
Yes,
Does that mean they must be, reviewed and consented to?
we just need to, we will want to understand them.
Right, now, I just wanna make sure that, you know, that the, board, whether or not the Board of Aldermen has to first have concurrence or consent before a board, approves a budget amendment. Because this doesn't say that, and I'm thinking that's kind of where,
I think that's where we're going.
right, so
Yes.
we probably just need to, I'm gonna kind of fix this and give it back to you. So it says exactly what your intent, if your intent is that the LGC staff must approve it before the board approves it, and I think we ought to be clear with that.
Well, I think that we would receive a copy of what the board wants to do, and we would make sure we understand it. And we would want, because what we would be concerned about, obviously, is that that amendment is not in some way further obligating town revenue that the town doesn't have.
So you're not saying that, I mean, I just wanna get clarity on
Mhm.
that, because I think that that's a big deal.
I think if I was not, I think if we reviewed a budget amendment that the town was getting ready to do, and I was not comfortable with the town doing that, that I would push back, and have a conversation. I might bring it to a board meeting and have a conversation about it or something. So, I mean, that sounds like consent to me, but we didn't quite say that. So, do you have some, if you wanna give us some language?
Yeah,
I mean-
I just wanna make it crystal clear,
Mhm.
so there's no ambiguity,
Yeah.
and that's okay, because given where we are,
Mhm.
you guys need to sign off, you
Mhm.
need to sign off.
Yeah.
But I just think it needs to be.
But that's the staff, we don't have to take that to an
Right.
LGC
Right.
meeting, cause we don't wanna stymie your operations. If you need to get something done, then, or make a change, we want you to be able to make it, so that's staff, not the commission.
No, I'm.
Yeah, okay.
We'll
Okay, send me some language and we'll do it next time.
So that means we're not signing tonight, right? Do we get the correct copy?
Yeah, we'll get some corrected copies.
I also have a question.
Okay,
So, where it says, LGC 203 for June 30th, 2021 reporting period to be determined.
yes, ma'am.
Who's gonna determine, and then there's one below that, who's gonna determine that, and, what type of time frame are we looking at before the board will know what that date is?
I think it's as soon as As soon as we know it, you will know it, because, the only reason that's to be determined right now is because of the work that the state auditor is doing. Potentially, it's going to affect your cash, and the 203 is a cash and investment reporting document. And it's also gonna affect your annual audit and potentially delay that some. So we'll know those, and once we know that, we'll have a document revision. Okay? We'll, as soon as we know something, we will share it. And that will be
Okay.
us and your manager and your auditor, we'll all be working together.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay? Anything else? Okay.
This is quiet, otherwise. We thank you, and, please drive carefully, and be safe.
Thank you.
And we
Say
do
that
hope-
every time.
My heart is with you guys. Thank you for being so kind to us.
Thank you.
They're not gonna leave us.
Not yet.
Okay, we are almost finished. 7B, Ms. Willenwood. Local financial update.
Good evening, Samantha Woolen-Weaver, interim town manager. Next slide, please. So this is our monthly financial report, and then we'll get more detailed in depth as we close out the fiscal year 2021 budget and continue through our fiscal year 21-22 budget. And as been mentioned several times tonight, the ongoing investigations with external agencies and our own internal investigations and things that we're doing, will provide more detail and be able to get you all and the public a lot more information, hopefully in the near future. So right now, finishing paying all of the invoices for fiscal year 2021. We're hoping to have all those closed out within 60 days, so that we got about 7 more days. That's just the time limit we put on ourselves internally, so hopefully we can meet all that. And then we're doing a transaction audit, so every single transaction, not just checks that were written, but every single transaction, line item transaction is being reviewed. As well as revenues, every single daily intake of revenues, any kind of transfer in, every single part of our financials for 2021 is being reviewed at this time. And we'll keep working with the state auditor's office, with their forensic audit or the investigation. And then next month, at our first meeting, we will bring an audit contract to the board, because the board does have to approve that. So that's not set in stone, but we will bring you the contract. They'll have a price and terms, and we can all review that together. And we'll make sure our legal counsel reviews that contract prior to you seeing it as well. And we are working on bank reconciliations. At this time, we do have financial staff, and as Alderman Jackson asked about earlier. So currently, all of our finance staff are external. Right now, we have an accounting firm out of Raleigh, Greg Isley's firm. There are 2 employees with his firm that are here. One of those is a bookkeeper, accounting technician type of duties, and the other is acting in more of a finance director, manager capacity. And we are rebuilding the finance department from the ground up. And so we are very busy doing that, but we want to do it correctly. So we can have a sustainable department moving forward in the future. We've already discussed the audit firm, and then the other one is Miss Nancy Medlin with Mid-Carolina Council of Government. She's been on board for several months now. I'd say at least 5 to 6 months, and she's still with the town. So we do have a transition plan in place to recruit in-house staff. We recruited for a finance director, and as everyone knows, we did not fill that position. So we do have to contract out finance staff to keep the town running. But we have a transition plan in place that we'll go over tomorrow at my LGC coaching session. And hopefully by the end of the year, we will have a fully staffed in-house finance, department. That is my goal. Any questions on that?
Alderman Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Alderman Garrison, Alderman Sutton.
I think you answered it. So the people that you have coming in from Raleigh, they have a contract with us?
They do. Well, they have a engagement. They have an engagement agreement. Yes.
Saying that we're paying them so much.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have to come before the board?
It did not. It was below the threshold, but it was, as you saw earlier in the slides, the finance officer has the authority to contract out those staff, so it would be just like me hiring someone to come in. I'm not sure about Nancy. Nancy was here before I came.
But how does that work within the budget that we have? Are we budgeted for that?
Yes, ma'am. We have, an outsourcing line item for that, and we have a separate line item for, the auditing firm as well. And then some of the salary that was going to be for the finance director, we took half of that because we didn't expect to fill that for at least half a year. And so that's what's paying for some of that now. And actually, I just sent, spreadsheet over to the LGC this afternoon about our cost analysis of how much it's gonna cost to keep the independent contractor staff on board.
Can I get a copy of that?
Sure.
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Samantha, we want to thank you again as acting interim town manager as well as finance director, and continue to get the salary you're getting for interim town manager. I know that your job has been very hard. I can thank the individuals and greatly appreciating rebuilding our finance department so that the citizens, as well as I'm a citizen, would know where their tax dollars are going for future reference, and when we rebuild, we get better. So, again, I wanna thank you for that, as well as Ms. McCullins has stated, these are things that we need constantly to know and let our citizens know. I believe in accountability, I believe in transparency. So, for future reference, these reports here are great, and again, let me thank you for the job that you're doing. Some people don't know really what happens behind the scenes when you're dealing with numbers. So again, thank you so very much, and citizens would like to say that I talked to, thank you as well.
I hope to provide a lot more information in the future.
Yes, ma'am.
As we get everything straightened out. All right, next slide.
No, Ms. Jackson again, she did it. I mean, she's gonna send the paper.
Yeah, I'll send it to the whole board, absolutely. Next slide. All right, so this is our water sewer fund report, customer service, revenue, multiple different names. Active customers in June, 3975. We always have around 3,900 customers, somewhere in that ballpark every month. And this is part of the information that we do send to the LGC in our monthly financial report that's due on the 15th. You can see the cutoffs there in June and July. The current receivable is actually as of today, and I want to thank Renee for getting me this information. Total, you can see, $827,000. The current portion of that is $94,000, and that includes bills that are set for cutoff on August 26th. And I was told that majority of those bills would be paid before cutoff or not shortly thereafter cutoff. This is how the process was explained to me, so just clarifying that. And then the other tiers is the amount of funds that are owed to the town, and you can see that is broken down. So that's all I have on the water sewer side. Do you all have any questions?
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, then Alderman Jackson.
Okay.
Did anybody bring in? Alderman Sutton.
Are we charging reconnection fees now?
Yes, we should be charging late fees and reconnect fees.
How much are they?
I'd have to check.
Okay.
And I know the late fee's $25, and I have to check what the reconnect is.
But with the 90 days plus, that's including a reconnection fee for some of those, or not including that?
That may include interest, all the fees, everything. That should be the whole entire account, whatever was in that account,
Gotcha.
which includes every fee that's associated.
Okay.
That's on our fee schedule.
Okay,
How are we collecting? If it's 90 days old, they're already off, right?
So, One of the policies that needs immediate attention is the collections policy and the debt set-off. And, so we have been working with the water sewer, I call it revenue department, on getting that in place, because we have not been doing collections every month, and sending people to the debt set-off program like should have been.
Why?
I cannot speculate to that, I was not here, but we're gonna get on the right track moving forward and doing it on a monthly basis, so we don't get this far behind.
And what about the 61 to 90 days, are they still on too? So is any of these numbers where they're off and we're trying to collect from them, or is all of them on, and that's just how late they are?
So a lot of them, sometimes if people leave, they move out and they have an outstanding bill, or if they move within town, and go somewhere else, they can open up another account. Sometimes there is transfers, but it's actually different situations, it's not the same situation, so I can't say what each one is for. But a lot of them are for people who have moved.
And but we have a collection agency for that, do we?
We do the debt set-off, yes.
We do that?
Yes, we go through a program with the state. And I'm gonna actually have, LGC was doing the training this month, and each work session moving forward will be about different topics like this.
And that's the name, it's called debt set-off?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The debt set-off normally goes to an agency, and then what happens, they put it on your credit report. So, that's how that works in that department. As well as, we're talking about the revenue, this is not on here at this particular time, but, Ms. McCullens kind of alluded to it. Our tax, property tax normally comes in, I think, around November, December, January. And that's one of our bigger taxes, that the town has. So, to say that, with you giving us this report, for future reference, we'll get that as well, so we can follow that.
Yes.
Mhm.
So as the report she was talking about earlier.
Right.
We did send those to the LGC. We're finalizing tomorrow in our coaching call, but we can provide those. We were gonna do quarterly, because quarterly gives you more time to look at the trends, but if the board wants to see them monthly, we can do a monthly at the last meeting of the month for the prior month.
And I think that'll be important for our citizens as well, because it's very important when you look at the end of the year and see exactly what you're paying. So, it's kind of us learning all together, and the citizens will understand as well about their taxes, 70 cents per $100, and then our, property tax, and if we can break it down to explain it to them, so they'll understand as well. So I think it's great that you presented this, thank you.
Our overall revenues are low, because just like I
Right.
stated, most of them don't come in until later, in the fiscal year, which is why it's important to have enough cash flow to be able to operate.
Yes.
So, but yes, I can provide it on a monthly or quarterly basis. It's up to the discretion of the board.
I kinda like this, it's kind of self-explanatory on a monthly basis, get caught up, and I think it's.
Yeah, and we have, so that the pre-audit requests, every time somebody wants to purchase something, they have to, I don't get too far into it, because it's gonna be our training session in a few weeks, I don't wanna spoil it for everybody, but, that's all done, we have POs, we encumber amounts so that funds can't be spent, so we're really taking a lot of precautions.
Alderman McGowan.
I didn't do the numbers, I was thinking about doing them. But, looking at June and 200 people disconnect, July 267. Each one of those individuals that reconnect, that's about, $25 or more that comes in. All of that money is this large sum of money that, we lost out during the COVID. During the time that, the people didn't have to pay this, didn't have to pay that. And that was a large chunk of money just gone. Thank you.
Would you guys like for me to, at the next
Yeah.
monthly financial report, tell you of any of the COVID-19 payment plans that are
Yes, ma'am.
outstanding and break that down outside of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cause you're correct, we lost lost a lot of revenue and they're supposed to set up payment plans. So I'll break that number out for you.
Can I ask this question, the $300,000 that the town was gonna receive from the American Release Fund? I thought we may talk about it today. Have the town received that money? I know it's a different monies, we can't use it for different things, it's supposed to be used for the citizens, and if we're gonna have a citizen, meeting, public hearing, they can come out and speak as well. Because I say that to say, the water bills went up. I asked for education to the people, it went out in their water bills. And I think we'll probably talk about that at another time, but the monies is to be used for the community and the citizens, and we may be able to even help with some water bills, but whatever, cause the citizens are being involved as well with that money.
We are waiting on the final, guidance from the U.S. Department of Treasury to release. They haven't released the final guidance, is what I
Okay.
read today. The town has received $3.8 million. We have received 1.9 million of those, but they are secure
Right.
in an account that, cannot be used at this point. And until we have an overall spending plan, they will not be used. So I wanna make sure we aren't doing anything that the county or the state would be doing for our citizens, and make sure we can
Right.
make the most out of the funds we have received, because this is a one-time.
Yes,
Set of
ma'am, we
funds.
wanna make sure we utilize it correctly for our citizens. Thank you, Ms. Samantha.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Mayor, I had something.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Are we referring, people who are at risk of getting their service shut off or have it shut off? Are we referring them to some of the, organizations that are helping during COVID?
I do believe they are, but I will confirm with, the revenue supervisor, but that has come up before.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
Thank you.
Item 7E. The county commissioners want to know if Spring Lake wants to endorse or be a part of their mask mandate. They're meeting tomorrow morning, and they would like to know what the governing body of Spring Lake thinks about a mask mandate throughout the county. Now, I was told that Fayetteville and Hope Mills are both interested, with Spring Lake being the third largest municipality in Cumberland County area. They need to know, and I'll tell them tonight or tomorrow, what the consensus of Spring Lake is for a mask mandate. Alderman O'Gara.
I can see a
Yeah, Pro Tem next.
mask mandate within, buildings, our building. I'm not quite sure we can enforce it out on the streets, or we can enforce it in Walmart, but, at different locations, they are providing get masks as you walk in. So I don't know how much, power this board would have as far as making that happen. And if we did come out and say this, and this, then I don't think we had the ability to enforce it. But, as far as this building or any town building, I feel that, we should be wearing masks. And, I wish us the best. Thank you.
I guess I have two questions. One is on enforcement, like Mr. Aguirre said, and the other is on authority. I guess authority is probably the most important one. Do we have an authority as a town to do a mask mandate? I thought the state has to give us that power explicitly.
The state and local governments can declare a state of emergency. I think probably within the county board, there is a declaration of emergency.
I can't hear Mr. Charleston.
I believe that under emergency circumstances, towns can exercise certain authority. And that's how other cities have done it. The city of Fayetteville just put a mask ordinance in place that was very narrowly, drafted that kind of parallels some of the other cities in town. I haven't read it carefully, but I do know that, the earlier, declarations were of an emergency, gave certain authority. I have looked at your charter on that issue. But, I would think that you do have the authority to do certain things when there's a public health or public safety, at risk.
So if we're signing on as part of the county, who would be in charge of enforcing this? Would it be us? Would it be the county? Who would it be?
You'd be enforcing it within your, jurisdictional limits.
And do we have the capacity with our current budget to enforce a mask mandate?
Now, that I don't know.
Ms. Fuller?
So, Mr. Charleston, that would be enforceable through the police department?
Technically, it would be, but I don't know, again, I haven't seen the county's, proposed resolution.
So if they, well, when they do right, they will cover, I guess you may say, consequences or limitations.
What I would say, when the county adopts one, it would have been carefully vetted by their council. And so, I wouldn't expect they would put anything forward that would not be enforceable.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
so I spoke to, one of the commissioners, and, it's their belief that they'll be passing an ordinance tomorrow, for indoor mask mandate in, the unincorporated parts of the county. And because we have pockets, that means that that ordinance would apply to parts of Spring Lake that are not in the, in the same city limits. So, and I know Fayetteville has passed it, and, I'm not sure what Hope Mills is gonna do, but it's, like I said, it's my understanding they're gonna pass that tomorrow.
My understanding is that Hope Mills endorses the county's version.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody there, but, I do know that that is what the county intends to do. And, Wake Forest has already done that, and several of they've done it for the unincorporated parts of the county, and other municipalities have passed it as well.
Are there any other notions of?
Well, I'll just say I'm for it.
Okay, all right, we'll assess that in a moment. Any more comments? All right, would you make that a motion, Alderwoman Cooper?
Yes, I make a motion that we, pass an, indoor mask mandate in the incorporated parts of the town of Spring Lake.
Just a second. Second by, Alderman O'Gara. All in favor of the motion, sign of aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sign of nay. All right, I heard some aye. All right.
Can I get some understanding of it? Is it too late?
No, it's not too late.
Okay, I think it was said, who's gonna enforce it? The police officers? Somebody said something about the police. I mean, normally when we have it, if it's mandated and we've, look like we, you said Fayetteville was doing it, right, Mayor? And Cumberland County,
Cumberland County overall.
Right,
And from what I was told, Fayetteville endorses it, and so does Hope Mills.
right, I heard it on.
And we are asked if we would endorse their mask mandate.
And who's enforcing it? We just gonna have it just like they do, right?
Whatever.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, come on, sir.
Well, basically, the business is gonna enforce it, right?
Right,
So
that's
therefore,
right.
something the business gonna have to do.
That's right.
As a police officer, what we're gonna enforce is trespassing. Because if they don't
Yes.
have masks on, they call us for trespassing.
Mhm.
So we're gonna take care of trespassing.
It's
That's right.
voluntary
Yeah,
compliance.
we're not gonna be a mask police.
Okay, that's good, thank you, appreciate that. I just heard him say police, I was wondering, it had changed, thank you.
Alderwoman Jackson.
That's good.
We're gonna get a copy of what they're asking for, so
I'm
we know
sure, yeah.
exactly what we're saying yes to.
Absolutely.
And then the part about certain parts of Spring Lake, is that gonna be ended
I mean, is that gonna be in the thing to name the certain parts of Spring Lake?
What,
That is,
I think.
I think the word
Uh,
unincorporated, takes care of the donut holes within the Spring Lake city limits.
okay, cause I know I just heard somebody say that it'll be certain parts of Spring Lake. Cause you have parts of Spring Lake that Hornet County has Spring Lake, but it's in another county.
Right, we're not going
You're not
across
gonna go
county
there.
lines, no.
So we're just gonna basically do the city limits of Spring Lake. And the county will do their part of
Yes,
Spring
that's my
Lake.
understanding.
But we
But
can't
the
get a copy
language
of the
will be-
mandate.
Say again.
We will get a copy of the mandate.
I'm going to get at least 6 copies for every board member
Thank you.
and make a motion. Anything else, Mr. Charlton? Yep. With this. And you have not seen
No.
their proposal?
No, I will say that, though that the city of Fayetteville, I'm sure that, Cumberland County is really nothing more than, encouraging voluntary compliance with the mass ordinance. So, public safety officials and other, public health officials are encouraging, the private sector to, voluntarily comply with the mandate.
Voluntarily means if I want to.
Well, that's what the.
So how is that a mandate then if you voluntarily don't do it?
I think we're just, slicing and dicing words, but the order itself is what controls. And so in Fayetteville, I haven't seen one in Cumberland County, but I just pulled up the one for Fayetteville. And it just clearly says that public safety, law enforcement and other public safety officials are strongly encouraged, to, direct the public to voluntarily comply. So that's all it is.
And one more thing too, a good barometer of how mask wearing is going in Cumberland, the students, in the schools that I saw today, they're wearing masks. So I don't know if that's gonna be, a big issue. Well, and that's what Cumberland County Commissioners want to cover some. Okay. All right, so I will let them know that the board, by consensus, vote, endorse their plan. Okay. Item 7E, 7E, Mr. O'Gara. Trucks in the neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. I'm not gonna, push this too far, I'll just say a few things, and then I'm gonna ask the board to vote on it. Like I tried to tell you earlier, 232 Christian tractor trailer on the street. Police came out, pretty much the only reason that the individual departed was because the police came up and informed him that he was blocking an entranceway to the individual's back of the house, where the guy had the gate. So the guy left and went somewhere else, dropped the trailer, and came back and parked on Lake Tree. And when you park on Lake Tree ain't but so big. And if you got 18-wheeler cab sitting there, that means that it's obstructing traffic, because it's two-way traffic. And since our last meeting, we have more vehicles actually coming into play. Right off of Lake Tree, Rainland Street, there's an 18-wheeler that's parked pretty much in the driveway. It's not an obstacle, but he's in the housing area. And if we were to put something down on paperwork, that would eliminate that. The individual that the police has sent Lieutenant Brown out to try to get the guy to move his truck or to back it up some so that it would stop obstructing traffic. Well, he's back where he was before. So when people come out of Regina, turn on the Goodyear, they can't see. A good example of that is if you ever go to the post office here in town and you pull up on the side rather than pull in the post office, and cars are trying to come out of the post office, they can't see around that car or that vehicle to the left. So, that's just an example of what we're trying to say. Then, there's another vehicle on Goodyear. And he's back off the road, back in the woods. But bottom line is, these trucks are on road that's not made for them. They get in that housing area and they get to doing the pivot and whatnot, and they tear up the road. And, Raymond Street is a place where I've seen it happen. It happened also on, Lake Tree. And you can see where it was repaired, the one dark spot, still 60. The town doesn't have the money to be getting out here and making these repairs. So like, I'd like to make a motion at this time, Mayor, that the board move in the direction of putting a policy together, authorizing the town to go to work on it. That would be my motion.
Alderman Jackson,
I second that motion.
it has been moved and seconded that the town move in the direction of writing a policy which authorizes the board to write a status.
Readiness.
Unreadiness, okay,
Unreadiness.
Two, Alderwoman Sutherland and Alderwoman Cooper.
Mr. Mayor, we spoke on this at the last meeting on the 9th.
No, we didn't.
Well, what day did we speak on it, Ms. O'Gara? It's my turn.
Excuse me.
It's on the 9th on this paper
We
here.
spoke on it, but didn't vote.
Yeah, we spoke on it, that's what I'm saying, we talked about it, I just said spoke, I didn't say we voted, but it's on this agenda. But anyway, as I was stating, I think we need to take in consideration, I think what you just said, I might be wrong, but you said, were they impeding traffic and the one went and dropped the load off, but then he brought his vehicle back and he parked it in his, on his property? Okay, that was one. I think it's about 5 that you mentioned, or maybe 3. I wrote them down.
No, I said
Okay.
he parked it on Lake Tree.
But when you
And
said
he
one was
also-
backed up, he backed it up, but you can still see so I think we need to be kind of careful and think this out instead of making a vote right now, because if we can come up with a solution, because these vehicles, individuals are working. I do believe that, other individuals that are property owners or renting or whatever they're doing have a right to be able to see, to drive, so they can be safe and it's not impeding any traffic. But I think we need to be very thoughtful and think this through and stop moving so rashly if we're talking about creating a policy that's gonna affect individuals. I think everyone have a right to, work. Some people may not have, the capability of getting back and forth. So let's think this through and not be so harsh about it. Respect the individuals. If it's impeding traffic, they cannot see. Because there's trailers, big trailers, that's parked in Lake Tree as well, and it's backed up or somewhere that, so that's why we have to be careful, because it may be buses, it may be trailers. So I just think we need to think this through if we're gonna do a ordinance. Because I think everyone has a right to be able to see, to drive, and to work. So, and if we can come up with a place, then maybe the board can come up, we have property where they can park their vehicles. Let's try to be just thoughtful and thankful. Having individuals that's trying to work and do what they need to do, as well as not impeding the traffic. That's just what I'm ready to say. Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mayor Dobbins. Well, I think we already have something in place. I requested the town's traffic schedule, and, it does speak to the trucks. So, now this traffic schedule hasn't been, updated since 2011, but I believe we, it says commercial trucks shall not travel upon residential streets except for the purpose of pickup and delivery in that residential area. So, I believe we can update that without having to put a new policy in place. I mean, because I think it's important that we, instead of creating new policies, we either update the ones we have or leave them as they are, but I don't think there's a need to create a new policy when there's something already in place.
Are you ready for the question?
Question.
All in favor of Mr. O'Gara's motion, make it known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by the sign of nay?
Nay.
Two ayes and 3 nays.
Nay.
Okay, so that's resolved that issue for tonight. Is there a motion for item 8 on the agenda, closed session? Mayor Pro Tem.
I move we go into closed session pursuant to NCGS section 143-318.11A6 personnel.
Alderman O'Gara.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we enter into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A6. All in favor, sign aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
How you doing, man? Where you from? I need Come on through, sir.
We'll entertain a motion. Mayor Pro Tem,
I move that we come out of closed session.
Alderman O'Gara.
Second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded, we come out of closed session, all in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed,
Aye.
same like. All right, one more motion. Mayor Pro Tem,
I move that we adjourn.
Alderman O'Gara.
Second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded, we adjourn, all in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.